and welcome to the Regional Chamber's 2019 Economic Forecast Breakfast. So, once again, hopefully everybody had safe travels yesterday and some of the surprising weather. I'm Don Klein, President of the Great Lakes Group of Mercy Health and also the Chairman of the Regional Chamber Board here. And we've been hosting this breakfast for many years, and today we look forward to what our experts have to say as the Youngstown and Warren community continues to have some big and exciting developments. I think you'll find through Sarah's updates and others that there's some more developments to come that we find is positive, but we've also had our challenges this year, which we all know well. So once again, I think this is an important, pivotal time to kind of base us on where we are, but more so what some of the forecasts are going to next year. So clearly, speaking about 2020, next year, presidential campaign year, we're glad to welcome our two guests, both who have ties to the Valley, who are going to give their perspectives on the election via an entertaining exchange and joint presentation. So this ought to be fun. We're also honored to present our third annual Excellence in Manufacturing Award this morning to a company that is called the Valley home for many, many years and has been making some pretty innovative changes to stay competitive on a global scale. But first, I'd like to introduce our head tables here, and I'll actually start from, I guess, your left, coming across this way. Darlene McDermott, Market Leader and Growth Advisor, Southern Region at the Manufacturing Advocacy and Growth Network, known as Magnet, our presenting sponsor of the Excellence in Manufacturing Award today. Larry Dix, President of Quality Switch, our Excellence in Manufacturing Award recipient. Sarah Boyarko, Chief Operating Officer at the Regional Chamber. Rick Unger, Progressive Radio talk show host of the Rick Unger Show and one of our speakers today. Pete Asimakoulis, Executive Vice President, Small Business Banking, Youngstown Market President at First National Bank, and our event sponsor. And Pete, I know I wasn't perfect on that. Kim was trying to help me, but and then also Chris Swinkliski, Senior Vice President and Director of Portfolio Management at First National Bank Wealth Management, and our forecaster this morning. Bob Paduchik, Ohio Chairman of the Donald J. Trump for President, and James Dignan, President and CEO of the Regional Chamber. We'll kick off. We'll kick off our breakfast this morning by taking a look at what the Economic Development Team has been working on this year, as well as what's pending in our project pipeline. Please welcome to tell us more the Regional Chamber's Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Sarah Boyarko.
Good morning. I'm going to apologize in advance for my scratchy throat. I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room going through that this time of year. So throughout 2019, the Mahoning Valley experienced significant economic growth with committed investment of more than $212 million. This growth was seen in the areas of retention, expansion, and attraction, with millions of dollars of investment announced by Trailstar International with their groundbreaking in Smith Township, by Home Goods beginning construction of their distribution center in the village of Lordstown, and by Panomatic with the addition of a new division to be headquartered in Brookfield Township. These projects and others are summarized in the hard copy piece placed at each seat. With that being said, the forecast for 2020 is promising, not only with expected grand openings and groundbreakings, but also additional announcements by the more than 20 industrial projects and variety of initiatives that we're currently managing, some of which is highlighted in this year's economic forecast video. Please turn your attention to the screens.
To some, we're just a dot on the map, but we see an invigorating avenue of unlimited potential. And now, with more than $1.5 billion of pending investment in industrial projects, the Regional Chamber can turn that potential into results. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine allocated more than $3.6 million in the state's 2020 operating budget for Valley initiatives that include the Mahoning River revitalization, additive manufacturing, and the region's military installations. Our devoted economic development team is focused on supporting companies not only to create new employment opportunities, but also retain individuals who've already made a difference and will continue to. Construction is underway in Mahoning County for Trailstar International, a manufacturer of aluminum and steel dump trailers. After exploring various out-of-state locations, the company chose Smith Township to build its new 68,000 square foot facility. TJX Companies Incorporated has begun construction of its $170 million home goods distribution center in Lordstown. The 1.2 million square foot facility will service 300 of TJX's retail stores in the region. The Trumbull Energy Center is building a $900 million natural gas power plant that will employ skilled personnel in both the construction phase and ensuing operational phase. The Chamber will host once again the Columbus Drive-In and Washington, D.C. Fly-In events in 2020. This enables our business and community leaders to meet with state and federal officials to advocate for important Valley issues. After its launch in 2015, the Eastern Ohio Military Affairs Commission continues to provide unique military assets with broad national reach. As the #1 employer in Trumbull County, the Youngstown Air Reserve Station is set to upgrade its service protection gate to Pentagon requirements. Camp James A. Garfield remains a catalyst in training procedures for thousands of troops in the Ohio National Guard. Work has begun on a new $9 million shooting range. This will serve as a training site for troops from various military installations. The 2020 Thunder Over the Valley Air Show will bring the United States Air Force Thunderbirds overhead for a weekend of thrills. As thousands of people attend this event, its economic impact on our valley will be significant, as hotels, restaurants, and other establishments will be filled. We've come a long way, and our future is bright. Through 2020 and beyond, our $1.5 billion in pending investment is expected to create 945 new jobs and retain 2,104 jobs. With all that the Regional Chamber has accomplished, the wheels of our new goals are set in motion and will transform our dot on the map to a target of global innovation.
As you can imagine, all of the investment highlighted in the hard copy piece at each seat, as well as the video, does not happen because of one person or group. We continue to work with our local and regional economic development partners to ensure that each business is exposed to every program and service available. As the Regional Chamber is the only responder to all State of Ohio leads, many of these projects would not get off the ground if it weren't for the heavy lifting by the Regional Chamber's economic development staff. Our managers of business development, Lauren Johnson and Shay McMillan, work tirelessly to ensure that the local business community is aware of the numerous resources available to assist in the retention and growth of their companies, as well as the management of attracting new investment to the Valley. Michelle Phillips, our Director of Research, provides a wide variety of support, including property mapping, fulfilling requests from non-local firms looking to invest in the Valley, and conducting industry supply chain research. Nick Santucci, our Director of Government and Public Affairs, works to support companies and communities as legislative issues arise and continues to be a resource for state and federal advocacy. Our economic development staff is organized, aggressive, and determined to succeed. Let's give them a round of applause. Once again, the Regional Chamber and Northeast Ohio's Manufacturing Advocacy and Growth Network, also known as MAGNET, have come together to highlight a Valley manufacturing firm making significant strides in their industry. At this time, I'd like to invite to the podium Director and Magnet Market Leader Darlyn McDermott to announce the 2019 award recipients.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you. And thank you very much, Sarah and James and Kim, everyone at the Chamber, for really making this such a wonderful event and really making our job easy. So in a few minutes, I'm going to do something I seldom do, and that is read directly from my notes. And the reason is I don't want to miss anything, and I certainly want to honor this great company, Quality Switch. In a few minutes, we'll get to that, but I'd also like to say thank you very much to Magnet, and I'd certainly like to recognize Mike O'Donnell, our VPO here today, and our team, so thank you. So without any, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, am I the only one who feels honored to be with royalty? James told me that the mayor of Lordstown was on CNN yesterday, so I think that's pretty cool. So good job, Mr. Mayor. All right. So this morning, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to present the Regional Chambers and Magnet's third annual Excellence in Manufacturing Award. The criteria for this award focuses on company history, growth, areas in which the business excels, and focuses on new products and services that they offer. I think you're going to find that the company we're going to honor today and the individuals who comprise that company have exceeded in these areas and more. We had many excellent submissions for the award, and I want to be sure to congratulate those who were nominated. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes on here in the Mahoning Valley, particularly today we're going to see in Newton Falls, and we couldn't be more proud of that. As the Manufacturing and Growth Network, that's what we do. We've heard from the Chamber as well. We're all very proud of these folks. We're especially proud to present this award to a company that has been in business here in the Valley for 65 years. Quality Switch Incorporated is a family-owned business that was founded in 1956, and they design and manufacture switches for use inside electrical transformers on the utility power grids and for use in industrial power supplies. That's a mouthful. Let me say that again. This is highly, highly specialized technical electrical application, and it's done right here in Newton Falls in the Valley. I know we're in Boardman. The engineering-oriented company, which is based in Newton Falls and employs approximately 44 people, thank you, Larry, for giving me a +2 here. We had 42, has continued to develop unique abilities in both design and manufacturing to enable Quality Switch to compete nationally and internationally, and to expand into higher voltage applications and quickly test new and existing designs. The company opened the Horace H. Sewell High Voltage Testing and Research Center in 2016. The team at Quality Switch constantly works to adapt its products to meet customers' processes and design needs, resulting in continued growth and success. The company is always searching for reliability in materials, material applications and design, and testing. The Testing and Research Center will factor into its growth for the next couple of decades. With all of these efforts around innovation, Quality Switch has become an engineering resource for the industry and its customers. But it's not just a local presence. We are very proud to tell you that the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, presented the company with the President's E Star Award for Exports at a ceremony in Washington, D.C. in May of this year. Quality Switch was one of 6 companies to be honored with the award, which denotes the highest recognition any U.S. entity can receive for making a significant contribution to the expansion of U.S. exports. Secretary of Commerce Ross noted that Quality Switch has demonstrated a sustained commitment to export expansion and that the awards committee was impressed with its steady growth in export sales since receiving the same award in 2015. The company's modification of products for export markets was especially praised. I think as leaders, we all know that achievement is one thing, but sustaining achievement is quite another. Again, my congratulations to Quality Switch, and at this time, we're so pleased to honor Quality Switch today and the Sewell family and all the employees, and we are eager to hear more about the company and some of its latest endeavors. So without further ado, please join me in a very warm and respectful round of applause to our Excellence in Manufacturing Award recipient, Quality Switch President Larry Dix.
They warned me it's heavy.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Was very disappointed in May when we went to the Export Award and met with Ross. I found out he wasn't a billionaire anymore. That kind of upset me. So anyway, thank you. I am honored and privileged to accept this award on behalf of everyone at Quality Switch. We take pride in what we are doing, and we hope that we can continue to improve every single day. We view manufacturing as more than just assembling parts. We view manufacturing as a combination of design, quality, service, along with building the product. Earlier this year, as she said, we received our second Presidency Award. Our first was in 2015. The Presidency Award is for export growth over a 4-year time frame. I believe those awards say something about our manufacturing capability. Our first recognition for significant export growth was the Mahoning Valley Chamber of Commerce Award in 2005. Our company has grown over the last 20 years or so. It's grown both domestically and internationally. Exports now make up between 35 to 40% of our total business. We sell to 19 different countries, including Canada, Mexico, Korea, China, Japan, and Australia. In many cases, the cost for freight alone is more than the cost of the product, which leads me to think I need to rate prices or something. I can assure you that our success in these countries is not because we are the low-cost supplier. It's hard to compete at some of those places if you allow cost to be the focus. Our focus and success has been based on being different, on being better, on being unique. We focus on the actual need. We work with our customers. We work with their customers. We find ways to do things based on our knowledge of materials, design, how things fail, why things fail, and the manufacturing process. We strive to understand our customers' manufacturing process so we can better integrate our product into theirs. Last week, Jeremy and I were in Canada at a utility at their request. They reached out because they are not happy with the products they're getting, and they're asking for us to come in and look at what they have and what they made, what they need. They want us to do something different, something unique. As we move into the next decade, Quality Switch is focused on sustainable growth. We continue to invest in our country, our company, as witnessed by our $1.2 million investment in a high-voltage test facility 3 years ago. Last year, we purchased another CNC machine, our 7th, that allowed us to bring more work in-house. We continue to invest in software and training in the hopes to be better next year. We continue to be involved in organizations like the IEEE, the IEC, ANSI, and NEMA. We're involved in writing the standards for our products and the products they interface with. We want to be at the forefront of our industry, not following the trend. We also want to be in the valley. We want to grow here. We want to stay here. We want to be involved here. Most of us were raised here, grew up here, went to school here. Our families are here. The valley is home, and we hope to continue our growth here in the valley. Thanks.
Larry, congratulations again to you and your team on all your success and innovation and approaching 65 years here in the Valley. Just such a great accomplishment and commitment to the people in the Valley. And to Darlene, and Magnet, thank you again for your constant support and being part of the presentation of this very important award. So Chamber is also grateful to have a longtime corporate sponsor and friend in First National Bank. The organization has stepped up for us continuously and supported so many of our initiatives and endeavors. And we certainly couldn't have events like this one without them. It's truly a pleasure to introduce from First National Bank, Pete Asimakoulis, Executive Vice President, Small Banking Business, Youngstown Market President. Pete.
Thank you, Don. Don't feel bad. I still have a hard time with it. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Great to be with all of you today. On behalf of First National Bank and F&B Corporation, it's our privilege to once again sponsor this annual economic breakfast. We're also thankful to partner with the Regional Chamber in sharing what we hope to be valuable insights on economic trends globally, nationally, and regionally, as well as a discussion about the impact of those trends right here in the Valley. We recognize opportunities like this as a way to continue to grow our business relationships with a shared goal of making the Valley a place where businesses and in turn communities have the best opportunity to thrive. As of today, First National Bank has 380 locations in 6 states, including 28 in Northeast Ohio. FNB holds top retail deposit share in major markets including Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cleveland, and in North Carolina, Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, and the Piedmont Triad. As one of the nation's leading full-service banks, we offer comprehensive financial solutions to include commercial and consumer banking, trust, wealth management, insurance, brokerage, along with our highly regarded innovative online banking services, which include mobile banking and our security feature for your debit card called CardGuard. Additionally, First National Bank is steadfast in our commitment to making the region we serve a better place to live and work. FNB provides tens of thousands of dollars to the Youngstown area in nonprofits and economic development organizations. Over the last year, FNB has provided continued support to the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber, Youngstown Cityscape, scholarships for YSU, the Community Foundation of Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio, the Strimbu Foundation, the United Way, as well as valuable community centers such as the Oh Wow Children's Center and the Rich Center for Autism, just to name a few. We know that we can only be as strong as the communities we serve. The contributions, decisions, and deals that impact our region are made by experienced bankers, many of whom are sitting in the room today, who not only understand the nuances of the market, but are connected to its success as citizens, neighbors, and friends. Not only do we try to provide financial solutions, but our bankers also volunteer their money and their time to various community organizations and nonprofits. We hope that we've made a difference in our community. So on behalf of First National Bank, I want to thank once again the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber for the opportunity to be this morning's sponsor. I want to thank Mr. Anthony's for always providing a great atmosphere and breakfast. But most of all, I want to thank all of you for your commitment, your leadership, and your perseverance that has helped the Valley remain a strong, viable community. We're into some very exciting times, and I think the best is yet to come. Thank you and enjoy the program. As sponsor, I get to introduce a friend of mine. I believe that his presentation will be on your mobile device that you could follow along. So please check that. It was supposed to be delivered at 10 after. It's my honor to introduce an FNB colleague and friend who will be giving the forecast this morning. Chris Swiklinski is a Senior Vice President and Director of Portfolio Management for First National Bank Wealth Management. In his role, Chris provides sophisticated investment solutions for high net worth individuals and institutions in Northeast Ohio. He also leads a team of portfolio advisors who help clients reach their financial goals. The Westlake resident who has nearly 25 years' experience in financial services earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Bowling Green State University. Chris is a chartered financial analyst, a CFA, and a member of the Cleveland Society of Securities Analysts. In his free time, Chris enjoys volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club of Cleveland. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Chris Swiklinski.
Good morning. One more time, good morning. All right, great. It's always a pleasure to follow Pete because his name is harder than mine. It's a rare thing to find. As many of you know, I was here last year, so I'm going to go talk a little bit about what happened last year, and I was told that I need to tell you all the answers within 20 minutes, so if I go a little quickly, try to slow me down. So last year, when we came out, we talked a lot about trade. It's been a focus of the news on a day-to-day basis. We tried to quantify whether there was a problem with the trade with China, and our thought was there is a problem. And we also talked a little bit about the tariffs, and would the tariffs bring inflation? And last year, we didn't feel that the tariffs were going to cause inflation. The other subject that we talked about last year was, is there still time to make money in the market? As many of you know, we're in a very long economic increase, and we're in one of the longest bull markets in history. So is there still time? And what we thought last year is we looked at the consumer, and the consumer looked extremely healthy. We also looked at a lot of the fiscal stimulus that came into the market in the late 2017 and thought that that was going to be a really strong tailwind for the markets and the economy going into 2019. Now, looking forward to 2020, I want to take a little bit of time because as you turn on the news every day, there seems to be a lot of negativity. And it's endless. If you turn on the news and you listen to it every day, you're hearing things about trade wars, Brexit, Russiagate, elections, impeachment, fake news, student loans, national debt, corporate debt, negative rate debt, repo market mania, recession, inverted yield curve, inflation. Did I forget anything? It seems like we're on the precipice of Armageddon. Well, I'm here today to take the contrarian approach. I wear my special happy tie because we don't think it's that bad out there. In fact, we think the market looks pretty good, both for the stock market and for GDP. A lot of what I talked about last year was pertaining to consumer. I'm going to talk a lot about the consumer this year, and you're probably going to recognize some of the slides. But again, despite the bad news, we think we're positioned pretty well going into 2020. First, when you look at GDP, we're currently growing at about 1.9%. Now, many would argue that they want faster growth, and it would be nice to have faster growth, but 1.9% is not bad, and it's not negative. And our base case for 2020 is we're not going to see a recession in 2020. And I'll get into exactly why we think that as we go forward here. Now, my colleague has got me a new toy, so I want to use it here. When you look at the breakdown of the economy, really our economy is driven by consumers. Consumers make up almost 70% of the economy. So clearly, they're extremely important when you're talking about growth and gross domestic product. A strong consumer typically means a strong economy. Too many things in my hands. And one of the things we like to look at when we look at the economy is real median household income. It tells us about the health of the consumer. And simply what real median household income is your earnings adjusted for inflation. And it makes sense. If you're earning more money and you can buy more things, you're probably feeling pretty good. That's a good feeling. But if you look at another indicator from this real median household income measure, when you look at the economy, it tends to turn negative before a recession. So if real median household income is rising, we haven't typically seen a recession on the horizon coming up. But once it turns, such as it did back in 1990, and now this isn't working. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks to the president. Back in 1990, you can see clearly that the rising real median household income started to decline preceding a recession. So we don't see that right now. Right now, we continue to see real median household income on the rise. Now, this also has something to do with the stock market. We've noticed that there tends to be a correlation between rising real household median income and how well the stock market does. So if you go back to the mid-1980s, every year, except for one, that we've had rising real median household income, we've had a positive stock market. So in this environment where we're seeing rising median household income, that gives us a little bit of confidence that we should have a positive stock market next year. Now, can anybody tell me what year the negative 5% was from? Any guesses? It was last year. So I presented this slide last year and it had no negative years. Felt pretty good about that. But then we had a pretty nasty December. You'll probably remember December was a pretty nasty month in the stock market and resulted in a negative return for 2018. But I will say, year to date through 10/31 of 2019, the stock market is up now over 23%. So not only did it regain all that it lost in December, but really has a nice return on top of that as well this year. So I'm still thinking this is a pretty good indicator. When you look at the pieces of this indicator, inflation. You know, one of the things we talked about last year was we didn't feel that inflation was going to be rising at an excessive rate. A lot of people thought that it was because of the tariffs, they were going to really drive inflation. We have not seen that. And inflation continues to remain, largely in check. We continue to think inflation is going to remain in check going forward. The other part of this, of real median household income, is average hourly earnings. Right now, it's growing around 3%. That's pretty robust. That's got to feel good for consumers. And a lot of the companies we hear from are telling us that especially skilled labor is hard to find. We're finding they're finding people that hard to find people that are skilled in what they're doing, that come to work every day, that are motivated. And what they're telling us is if you want a job in this economy, you're going to get a job. So 3% should continue to grow. And that's evident as you talk about unemployment. Now, unemployment is at historical lows. People have got to be feeling pretty good about that. Again, if you want to find a job in this economy, many of the companies that we deal with are telling us that you can find a job in this economy. And I would also argue that low unemployment is going to be very supportive to that average hour earnings growth. Low unemployment means competition, means typically growing earnings. So we feeling pretty good about the consumer. Now, the strong consumer confidence is also affected by unemployment. And you can see clearly by this graph that unemployment is correlated with strong consumer confidence. And it makes sense. If you have a job, you're probably feeling a little bit more confident. You're probably willing to open up your wallet and spend, especially with the holidays coming up. I'm going pretty quick here, aren't I? I'm going to beat that 20 minutes. So this brings us to another slide, another indicator of how comfortable the consumer is, the misery index. Has anybody ever heard of the misery index before? Misery index is simply taking inflation and adding the unemployment rate to it. And again, it makes sense. If you are unemployed and you're seeing a lot of inflation, you're probably not happy. But consumers tend to be pretty content when you've got low inflation. They're seeing their paychecks go up. They're able to buy more things with the money that they're earning. And it really helps them open up their wallet. Now, one other aspect of this measure of the misery index I would like to point out is we're in the bottom 10% of measurements historically, which is significant. Whenever this is in the first quartile, it typically is a good indicator that we're going to have a good stock market. So if you look at the misery index, historically, when we've had the misery index in the first quartile, we've had better than average returns in the S&P 500 for, this would be so much better with my pointer, I'm so disappointed, for the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and the next 12 months. So a pretty good indicator that we could have a pretty strong stock market going into 2020. Are we feeling better about the economy? Are we ready to ignore a little bit of the bad news out there?
Depends who you are.
I'm sorry?
Then it depends who you are.
Yeah, well, okay. We'll take the negative people. We'll leave the negative people over there. We're staying over here. I'm not getting into a political discussion here. But more good news is interest rates. Now, if you look at where we were a year ago in interest rates, they were dramatically higher than where we are today. The 10-year bond last year was about 3.21%, and the 30-year was around 3.43 last time we got together. Now, we've seen a pretty substantial decline in interest rates. Right now, the 10-year bond is about 1.92% and 2.39% for the 30-year bond. Now, this is significant for both consumers and for corporate people. Because consumers, you're going out and you're buying a house, your payment's cheaper. You're buying a car, your payment's cheaper. Appliances. It just makes it easier for the consumer to go out and buy more things. Their payments are cheaper. So not only are they getting paid more, prices are not going up as much as people expected, but they're paying less interest as well. It's got to be a great environment for the consumer. Companies, when you look at these rates, I know my banking friends are not going to be happy about this comment, but they can refinance at lower rates. They can go talk to their banker and say, hey, the 10 years at 1.92, what's my rate look like? I'm going to be so fired. But it also gives them the chance when you're going out there and looking at doing new projects. When you're doing a new project, you got to finance that project typically. So it makes it more economically viable to finance those projects. So there's a lot of good news going on out there. And I didn't want to completely ignore manufacturing because it has been a little bit weak. And again, it's going to be a huge focus of the news over the next 6 to 12 months. And it's been a huge focus of the news. And we have seen some weakness. When you look at the Purchasing Managers Index, September was a little bit weak. You know, I will point out, though, as we sit in our research meetings, we talk a lot about, what caused that weakness. And we do wonder how much the GM strike had an effect on that weakness in September. We don't think the weakness is going to continue, and we did see an uptick in October in this measure. So we think this might be a short-term weakness in manufacturing. So we're not negative on manufacturing. And I got to say, I came in last night, and I typically stay over here at the Holiday Inn, which I can walk over here. It's wonderful. And I don't have to brave the 480 like some of my colleagues from Cleveland. But when I opened up the news, it's hard to ignore some of the great things going on in Northeast Ohio. You heard some on the video earlier. Lordstown Motors is taking over the Lordstown plant. They're going to be doing the Endurance electric vehicle out of the Lordstown plant. That's got to be great news. There's a 1.2 million square foot TGX distribution center coming up in Lordstown. That's a heck of a good sized distribution center. There's another power plant going up, a $1 billion power plant going up in the area. And I was just down at Youngstown State University for their career day for their business college on Friday. And I got to say, there's so many projects going on there that the growth there is tremendous. I love that campus. And I just before the speech, Pete mentioned to me that we have America Makes also in the area, making 3D, kind of a startup 3D printing technology, working in the area as well. So a lot of great things going on in the Youngstown and Northeast Ohio area. I hope people are feeling better. It's got to be the tie, right? So, in conclusion, as we look at the overall economy, ignore the news. You're going to hear a lot of things in an election season, and I'm sure my friends here are going to talk about that, both good and bad in the election season. But right now, as we focus on that big part of the economy, the 70% of the economy, the U.S. consumer is very healthy. The labor market's strong, and we don't see the labor market weakening. Inflation is in check. And just like in 2018, we don't think we're going to see inflation going up dramatically in 2020. Interest rates are low, very supportive for the consumer as well as the stock market. Manufacturing is a question, but again, we think that manufacturing is poised to start picking up in early 2020. And right now, we don't think we're going to see a recession in 2020. I guess our advice to everybody in the room would be, again, ignore the news and focus on the fundamentals. And thank you for your time. I hope I could bring a little sunshine to your day.
All right, thank you, Chris. And I guess two things. One, I've already established I'm not a phonetic pronunciation specialist, so you already know that. I'm also not an economic expert, but I think Chris's message is pretty straightforward and actually very similar to how we deal day to day or others, whether it's economics or others. Don't get caught up in the emotion of the day. Look at the core drivers, look at the underlying fundamentals, and really that's where we need to keep our focus. So, once again, I think great update and encouraging as well. So, I'll put the smiley face on as well. It's now my distinct pleasure to introduce our two guest speakers. They are here to give their perspectives on the 2020 presidential election, but will do so via a special joint presentation. Bob Paduchik, the Ohio chairman of Donald J. Trump for President, is an accomplished political strategist with 3 decades of experience winning political campaigns in the battleground state of Ohio. Bob is
Columbia County Republican chairman. Got to salt the crowd.
Bob was elected co-chair of the Republican National Committee in January 2017 and recently left that position to join Trump's re-election campaign. His involvement in Ohio led to running the winning campaign for Trump in 2016, and Bob would later be described as the architect of President-elect Donald Trump's wildly successful campaign in the state. He also ran winning campaigns for George W. Bush in 2000 and 2004, and is recognized by many political professionals as one of the outstanding campaign managers in America and an expert in campaign tactics. The executive director of the Bush-Cheney campaign in Ohio in 2000, he became a member of the Department of Defense Transition Team and was later appointed by President Bush as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs at the U.S. Department of Energy. Bob, who is also founder of Agincourt Consultants, served under 2 Ohio governors and in the Bush-Cheney White House, where he was the driving force behind the Yucca Mountain nuclear project. Both of his parents are Valley natives, and he spent much of his time here when he was a child. So, welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Rick Unger is progressive radio talk show host of nationally syndicated The Rick Unger Show. Previously, the host of the popular daily podcast, The Pod Complex, and the long-running radio program, Steel and Unger, on the SiriusXM POTUS channel. Rick serves as a widely read senior contributor on politics and healthcare policy at Forbes.com and is frequent political analyst on Fox News. What makes Rick's choice of media outlets unusual is that he is generally identified as a progressive working within the very bastions of a conservative media. He appears as a political analyst on the liberal voice of the Forbes on Fox and other Fox News and business television programs. As a senior political contributor at Forbes, he is referred to as the official token lefty. Rick spent many years in the entertainment industry as both an executive and creative writer and producer. He served as president of the Marvel Comic Character Group, where he enjoyed the role of being one of Spider-Man's bosses while placing words in the mouths of some of the most beloved animated characters in the world. He has also put some of television's most enduring shows on the air, including the long-running Access Hollywood. Rick, too, has ties to our valleys, having graduated from Liberty High School. Ladies and gentlemen, let the debate begin as we give a warm welcome to Bob Paduchik and Rick Unger, and also call on Regional Chamber Foundation President Guy Coviello to moderate their discussion.
Bob put on his glasses. That makes me a little nervous.
Okay, Mr. Paduchik and Mr. Unger, both of you have distinguished careers and continue to make an impact at the national level. So I want to thank you for carving out time from your schedule to spend the better part of 2 days here in the Mahoning Valley. You just heard Mr. Swiklinski's 2020 economic forecast. Is there anything in that forecast that changes your view of the 2020 presidential election or anything about the election that could impact Mr. Swiklinski's forecast? Mr. Unger, please lead us off.
Well, first, I want to thank you for creating this political divide. All right? You have to stay on that side.
I did shout.
Although you are to my left. I'd like to point that out.
Hey, Rick, when people start throwing things at you, I'm out of the
You don't
line
want to
of
be
fire.
close to the tomatoes. That's a good decision. Actually, I thought the forecast was pretty darn good. You know, I think that the country as a whole, and certainly the media, overreacted a few months ago when you started seeing those inversion curves and anticipating a recession. Look, we are in the longest period of economic growth we've ever had. That has to come to an end at some point. But I have never been one who, you're going to like this, Bob. I don't believe that, I think presidents get too much credit for good economies and get too much blame when the economy turns. This economy will turn. I won't be blaming that on President Trump, quite frankly. I have always looked to the business cycle to be the biggest player there. I will say, in listening to the economic forecast, one thing that has consistently troubled me, we talked about the 3% growth in wages. That is the nominal figure. When you look at the real growth figure for people working, it's much more in that 1 to 1.5% range. It's positive, and that's a good thing. But you know what? When you consider the economy that we have been living through, which has been fantastic, isn't it appropriate that maybe America's working people should, A, be doing better than a real wage growth in that 1 to 1.5% when you consider we now have at least, well, 2 generations of stagnant wages for the American worker. That's my biggest problem. My other problem was, don't ever tell people not to listen to the news. I'm going to be out of a job.
Well, look, there's no surprise the report that was presented. I mean, when you have a president that promises to stand up for working men and women during his campaign and then delivers on those promises, you see the results. He came in, he cut regulation, 13 regulations cut for every new one created, instituted tax cuts, and we've seen what happens when the American working man is unleashed, and the economy is doing a fantastic job. It was really burdened under the previous administration.
But you know, Bob, I was really looking forward to that 4 and 5% GDP rate. What happened?
Now,
we're at
look,
1.9.
You know, see, here's the thing. It's always like move the goalposts with Democrats on things.
I'm not the one campaigning who said 4 and 5% improvement in GDP.
Well, you know, if we...
I have the tape, by the way.
Thank you. Which tape?
The one where he said we're going to get 4 to 5% GDP increases.
Look, here's the thing. We have a great economy, and you don't see the Democrats running for president talking about it. You don't see the media talking about it because they would rather talk about things that are detrimental. So you can cherry pick different things that say, this isn't working out, this is what had happened. But when you talk to working men and women, the people that are going to vote in this next election, they're very pleased with what's going on.
Well, you know,
and for a guy whose job, right now, my job is to help get the president reelected, that's a great place to be.
We're going to have an unfortunate point of agreement because I have never felt good. Look, you know, I may not be supporting the reelection of the president, but I'll tell you what, I'm not going to root for people in this country doing poorly to make that happen. The reason that you develop an interest and an involvement in politics is to make life better for people. So if people are doing better, that doesn't make me unhappy. That makes me very happy. What you're going to get from me more, though, is going to be, I'm glad they're doing better. I probably don't give the president as much credit as you might. But I also won't be giving him the blame when it does eventually change. I don't think that's his fault. But I do think that working Americans ought to be going through a period right now where they're making up for some of the losses that they experience. And by the way, I don't blame the president for that. There's nothing, in fact, that the president can do about that. That is something that has to be resolved by business itself.
I want to thank you for your robust answers, but we want to move on to the next question.
We're not ready.
Each of you has a connection to the Valley. So would you please tell us what the Mahoning Valley means to you and what the Mahoning Valley means to the 2020 presidential election?
Well, you know, let me correct something that was said during the introduction for me. I'm not the architect of the president's victory. The president.
We hold you personally responsible.
He does for many things, but I'll just say this: it is his message that helped him win that election. And we talked a little bit about this. We got this kind of Abbott and Costello thing going. I'm the short, fat one, obviously.
I'm the tall, handsome one.
We were talking last night, and what Donald J. Trump has become is a blue-collar conservative. He has made the Republican Party a blue-collar conservative party. And we saw that first in the first few months of after he reached the nomination in 2016, when we were getting a tremendous response from people in Ashtabula, Trumbull, and Mahoning County, all through the Valley. We were pulling in support from disaffected Democrats and independents because of that message. And it's a message that people have been waiting to hear for a long time. I mean, me personally, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I was a Republican because my family's from Eastern Europe. Very grateful for Ronald Reagan and his position on that issue. But I was always thought that the Republican Party didn't look out enough for working men and women. So Donald J. Trump, the kind of president he has been these last roughly 3 years, has been great for me because it's making the Republican Party something I always wanted it to be and never was. And I think that is really a problem for Democrats.
Well, there's part of that I do agree with. You know, I'm still trying to get over the 2016 election here in the Mahoning Valley. I was here. I've been, Sirius XM Radio wanted me to go out into the Midwest to cover the election. And I said, well, why don't you send me to Youngstown? I obviously know it well, and I think that's a focal point because Bob is, you know, I'd like to say it's fake news. It's not. This area very much explains what has happened to the Democratic Party. We were always the party that did look out for working class Americans. We got very involved in the past 2 generations looking out for special interest, and I don't say that in a negative way. You had all of these groups, gay rights, gay marriage, things like this, that the Democrats took on. I'm glad we took it on, but the problem is we did it and turned out we couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. We forgot about the people who were the Democratic base. When you start forgetting about people, those people are going to know it, and they are going to change their loyalties. They did. Now, Bob and I would disagree on how much, well, certainly I believe that this president has done for working people. I don't think it's quite as expansive as how Bob feels, but he certainly got elected as a result of working people. And if you're looking for a reason why he might get reelected again, it'll be those same people. This area to me is just the crucible. And I say this to my fellow Democrats all the time. You want to change the trajectory here, you better get your butt out into places like Youngstown, Ohio. The Mahoney Valley, you know, when I grew up here, we didn't call it the Valley, we called it Youngstown. It's interesting. So you need to get out there and you need to talk to these people because these were once your people. These were the people that made Mike Kerwin the most powerful man in the United States Congress. But they're not doing it anymore because you forgot about their issues. So that part I certainly agree with.
Thank you. And you guys just mentioned, the Valley's role in the election in 2016. And since 2016, one of the biggest pieces of economic news to come out of the Valley is General Motors. So starting with Mr. Paduchik, what impact will the General Motors Lordstown situation have on those same voters in 2020?
Well, the Democrats and the press are trying to make it as big of an issue as they can. I wish they had put more effort in it when they bailed out GM and would have cut a deal that would have done something for Lordstown. But look, we just had last week's announcement with the Lordstown Motor Corporation. It'll be very interesting to see what that does. The report that I heard was that they would have 400 jobs next year. By this time next year, they'd be in production with over 400 jobs. It'll be interesting to see how that grows, and I think that presents a lot of opportunity. Let me just say this. The Youngstown-Warren Regional Chamber does a fantastic job here. James, you and your staff are incredible. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm here today is because you are an important voice in the state of Ohio. You maximize and leverage the influence that you have, not just in Columbus, but in Washington, D.C. So, look, the Democrats keep talking about it. When they're in Ohio, they all have to come out here and hold a press conference in front of that factory. And again, I wish they would have done more when they had an opportunity to do it.
I want to know if Bob gets debate points for complimenting the chamber. Look, the one thing I'd be concerned about, obviously the Lordstown story has been a big story. We've all covered it. We've all talked about it. At some point, you've got to realize that if you get too focused on a story like that, even if it's a dismal story that maybe is going to turn into a more positive story, you're forgetting about your other opportunities. We've talked about this. I think that this area of the country is ripe for manufacturing. And I will say the other part of the presentation on economic status, I'm a little harder on where we're at on manufacturing than what we heard. I do think it's a problem. We're in a manufacturing recession right now. I'm not thrilled with where it's heading because I do think that this is where the trade impact is going to have its biggest problem. But you know what? You people who work here and are developing this area, you're in a unique position. There are a lot of manufacturing companies still out there that need to have a good place to go, and this is a great place for them to go. So when you talk about Lordstown, I'd say, and I have this conversation with my friend Tim Ryan fairly frequently, don't go over the top on Lordstown. What happened, happened. And again, I don't blame the president for it happening. This is life. But don't get so wrapped up in it that you lose the opportunity to take advantage of the workers that are here. You've got phenomenal workers here. I worked in the steel mills all the way through going to college at Ohio State. Go Bucks, Mr. Tressel. I will always tell you, I learned more from the people I worked with at Republic Steel than I did in any of my classes. These are incredible people. That is the story you have to sell to businesses around the country. Come here. The weather's not great, but you know what? The weather's not great in most of the country. So unless you're going to go to California, and none of you want to do that, I know, this is a perfect spot to come. Don't get over wrapped up in the Lordstown thing.
Thank you again. Many months ago, when we first started to talk about having this format, it was all about economic forecast and forecasting the election. But now there's a major story out of Washington, and that's the impeachment hearings.
Really? I haven't heard
So we'll catch you up
What
after.
happened? Another federal judge messing around? What?
So would you take a moment to give us a forecast of where you think or how you think the impeachment hearings are going to conclude and the impact they're going to have on the election.
The president will be impeached. The president will not be convicted. He will still be in office. Now, where that question gets interesting is when you say what will be on the impact on the election. I have a pretty good idea what Bob will tell you he suspects. I'm not sure is the honest answer. It certainly could prove to be detrimental for a Democratic candidate. It could prove to be detrimental to the president, depending on, starting today, what we learn in these public hearings. As far as I'm concerned, nobody should have made up their mind on this. Nobody, on either side. I've read all the transcripts, incredibly dull work. It's interesting, but until we hear it coming publicly out of the mouths of these witnesses so we can all judge, you really shouldn't have that point of view established. I kind of resent some of the Republican senators like Lindsey Graham, who says he won't read it or pay attention. He's always made up his mind. The Constitution set his role up as being a juror in this situation. What will it mean? Listen, we live in a time where our news cycle goes in about 24-minute spans. I strongly suspect by the time we get to the election, most Americans will be going, impeachment? What impeachment? They will have forgotten. They will have moved on to other issues.
It's interesting here because we're going to have some people that will testify in public that have testified in secret and privately, and all of those people are career bureaucrats, unelected, that disagree with the president's foreign policy, and they have opinions about it.
You don't know that.
Yeah, we do know that for a fact. Every one of those people is a career.
They disagreed with his off-books foreign policy.
No, they disagreed with his foreign policy. If you read the different testimonies that have been leaked out, and we haven't seen any cross-examination on it because the Democrats haven't released that, the whole thing is farcical. And what makes it even more farcical is the fact that the Democrats have wanted to impeach him. They've made up their mind since the day he was elected.
But that's the political talking point. Look, I don't care.
But that's the only talking point.
Well, no, I'll tell you why I disagree.
No, it is because as you said yourself, there's not a case that is going to be made here that convinces the Senate to remove him from office.
But that unfortunately is political. I can't tell you that there won't be a case made. I can't tell you that there will be a case made. But we don't know yet if there will be a case made where a reasonable, objective juror would find in a certain way. Look, having gone through this stuff, I am very much of the opinion, and I haven't been trying to get the president out of office since he got elected. He may not have been my candidate, he may not have been my choice, but you know what? He won. And I think he won fair and square. He won the Electoral College fair and square. He is the president, whether I like it or not.
Absolutely.
But when you look at what was going on here and you see an off-books situation where Rudy Giuliani was really running our foreign policy from the president in the Ukraine, look, we're all sitting here and we're going, this is not the end of the world. This is not really impacting on my life. But I'll tell you what, if Barack Obama were the president today, and I got word that he was attempting to cause investigations in a foreign country that would harm his political opponents, and to do that, he was holding up badly needed money that the military needed to fight the Russians, for goodness sakes, I would be as disturbed about that with Barack Obama as I would with Donald Trump.
Well, Rick, your wish has been granted because the Justice Department is doing a criminal investigation of how the Steele dossier, how the investigation in the Russia hoax got started. And in a matter of weeks, maybe a month or two, we're going to see the results.
You might get it this week.
We might. Who knows? Because what has happened is.
You want to interrupt the congressional?
Well, no, it's okay. As happens in an investigation, it opens new doors and new possibilities. When that became a criminal investigation with a grand jury and subpoenas, that changed the ballgame. No one in the media is talking about this.
Actually, I talk about it all the time.
Well, but you're different. You're not. No, Rick, you truly are. Because Rick is the kind of Democrat. I wish the Democrat Party was more like Rick Unger. And let me tell you why.
So do I. Would you tell them to get
No, I completely agree. Because Rick reminds me of my mother before she became a Republican about 10 years ago.
You say that to all the Democrats.
I do. Her hair is just as majestic as yours.
I hope she had more of it.
Well, I wish I had more of it. But no, in all honesty, I think that when we look at where politics is, and to bring this back to the 2020 election, what we're seeing from the Democratic candidates is just something that is just out of step with America, with average Americans. I mean, the idea of socialized medicine is not going to sell well in the Valley.
No, it's not. But then again, and we should have this discussion about it, it's not really socialized medicine. I know that you're all going to go, oh, there's a Democrat talking again. It is such an important issue. And as Bob knows, I am not a supporter of Bernie Sanders or his health care plan for a number of reasons. I do think it's inevitable. I think, sadly, as the health insurance business goes, and I am very familiar with it, some of us are going to wake up one day in a hospital bed and we're going to discover that the health insurance companies have figured out they can make more with their money in a passive investment, let alone another business, than they're making in the health insurance business, and they're going to pull out. When that happens and you can't get your insurance agent on the phone to pay your claims, there's only going to be one bank in the country big enough to take it over. And our sponsor here is a terrific bank, but even they aren't big enough. It's going to be the United States government. I don't see that happening in our near future. I don't think that Americans are ready to make the bargain that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie are asking for, which is give up your private insurance. Look, a lot of union people in this area who have for many years now not received wage increases. Instead, they got better benefits in their union contracts. I don't think they're going to feel too good about being told, being ordered, well, all that benefits you got, sorry, you can't have that anymore. You now have to do it our way. That's not going to happen. And, you know, I keep saying, I think Elizabeth Warren, when she put out that plan, this is one of the slowest suicide notes in history.
I'm going to use that line if you don't mind.
Please don't attribute it to me.
I most definitely will.
Okay, there are actually 2 Republican candidates, but there's a whole slew of Democrat candidates.
Name
that
3.
entire field, starting with Mr. Unger, who is the best candidate for the Mahoning Valley economy?
Tim Ryan, but he's not a candidate anymore. Boy, and please don't take this as an endorsement, because I'm being very careful, because I do a radio program, not to endorse any of the candidates. I want people to get there on their own by knowing what these candidates' issues are. You know, off the top of your head, you would probably have to look at somebody like Joe Biden. He does have a better sense of old school Democratic politics, and old school Democratic politics relates to people like the people in the Mahoning Valley. I don't have a lot of confidence that a Bernie Sanders would understand your lives or your issues. I don't know if Elizabeth Warren would. I do think Mayor Pete might be able to relate. I think his is going to be a really interesting candidacy. I did predict last week that Mayor Pete's going to win the Iowa Democratic primary. I think that's going to be a shocker. I don't know what happens to him after that. But I guess I'd say Joe Biden.
Yeah, I would agree with, I think 2 significant things have happened in terms of Joe Biden's campaign the last few days, and that is the Bloomberg potential entrance, which is really going to cut into Biden's support. And then Mayor Buttigieg, that poll that has him up in Iowa, I think is trending and moving in the right direction. Iowa, the caucuses is just a fascinating aspect of American politics. So he's going to have to translate that into organization to turn those folks out, and we'll see what kind of capability he has with that. But honestly, that's almost like the death rattle for Biden's campaign. It
could be. I mean, you know, all you have to do is think back to how Iowa changed everything for Barack Obama.
Right.
Had he not pulled off that shocking victory, I don't think he would have gone on to be president, frankly. So, yeah, it is a bad thing for Biden. Bob and I shared with Bob my theory on why Mike Bloomberg is running. I'll share it with you. I don't know that anybody agrees with me, but I've been talking about this all week. The rules this year or next year in the Democratic convention are a little bit different. Starting next year, superdelegates cannot vote until the second ballot. Now, I am, at this point, nearly 100% convinced that we are heading in the Democratic Party to a brokered convention. I don't think anybody is going to have enough votes going into the convention to win on a first ballot. Now, you get to the second ballot, and then the battle becomes between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Which one is going to drop out to give the more progressive track the opportunity to get enough ballots to win? I don't know how that plays out, but I think this goes down the road quite a ways. And if you are the superdelegates and you're looking for a candidate, I think that's where Mike Bloomberg starts to look really good. And I think that's why he's doing this, not because he expects to win many, if any, primary races.
No, that's interesting, and I said that last night, and I've thought a little bit more about it. I think, though, that there's a fundamental challenge for Bloomberg, who, having been a quotation marks Republican, mayor of New York City, I just think that that there are forces within the Democrat Party that are going to have a hard time stomaching that, even though it may, on paper, be the right strategic move. I mean, I think there's more likelihood that somehow Biden would be resurrected at that point than it to be Bloomberg, if he's still around. Now, we've seen this with John McCain in his campaign. That campaign went down to two guys in a car.
Exactly.
And then came back and got the nomination.
That's right.
And so it literally two guys in a car.
He was carrying his own suitcase, getting on coach and going wherever he could. You're absolutely right.
Right.
You did. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But as you look down the road, I think what happens if you do get to a brokered convention on the Democratic side and they're struggling to come up with a nominee, I don't know. The attitudes change pretty quickly. Where you once may have been all gung-ho about the agenda, when you get to that point, you start thinking about one thing and one thing only. Jesus, do we have anybody who can beat the president? That's what it'll get to. And then when that question gets asked again, that was the question that we started the campaign with, right? And that's why Biden was doing so well. There was this, whether right or wrong, this universal feeling that if anybody can defeat Donald Trump, it's going to be Joe Biden. Well, that's obviously slipped. That question will come back as progressives even begin to move away from the progressive agenda that they want to see and start thinking about, well, I guess that didn't work out. At least we got to beat Trump. Then you're going to start to see a different approach at that convention. And that's where I think Mike Bloomberg could end up. Problem with Mike Bloomberg is he's a very smart guy. He is not exactly, he's not charismatic. How about that? So I don't know how he does.
Yeah.
Mr. Unger, when you walked up, you made a note of
Did you call me Mr. Unger?
I called you Mr. Unger.
No better than that.
Rick, you made a note of our divide up here between the left stage and the right stage. Can you forecast a time in which we won't be so divided?
I wish I could forecast it. I can't. It is absolutely, and Bob and I very much share this feeling. Look, we both do what we do because it's fun. We enjoy it. We enjoy politics. To me, when you sit down at Thanksgiving, you're supposed to talk about politics. But you're not supposed to want to kill the person sitting next to you. It's gotten to be ridiculous. There's a couple of things I ask people to keep in mind. I always say for myself, when I die, which is getting pretty soon, I'm afraid. I'm getting old. When I die, I wanted you to feel sorry for me. When I die, if I was right 51% of the time, I win. But it means I was wrong 49% of the time. You're not always going to be right. So all you can do, if you actually care, know the facts. Know what you're talking about. Because I'll tell you what, I'll debate a guy like Bob Paduchik. He knows what he's talking about. We're not going to end up killing each other because I may disagree with his solutions. He may disagree with mine. But how can I get crazy if the man knows what he's talking about? And then you have just as good a chance, if you're being objective, he has every bit of a chance of being as right as I do. So if you can get people to that point, where they realized, we were, again, talking last night, I said, the only thing that's going to save us at this point is an invasion from Mars, because we only get together with each other when we all feel a mutual threat. We haven't had that since the Cold War. But Americans have to smarten up about this, because this is hurting our country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm very good friends with Aaron Pickrell, who ran both of Obama's campaigns in Ohio and the Hillary Clinton campaign in Ohio, and we would run into each other. We have a moratorium when it gets, 6 months out from Election Day that we don't talk to each other, but we'd occasionally run into each other. And we had some great discussions afterwards. I tell you learned some fascinating things from folks, and none of that I will share with you because I respect them a lot, but I miss that.
And that's such a great point you just made, because by being willing to hang out or communicate with the, quote, other side, as a journalist, I learned so much more than other Democrats, because I'm out having a beer with Sean Hannity. Sean's going to tell me some stuff, right? I'm not going to tell you what, but you learn stuff. You get smarter. You understand better what the other side, I hate to even use those words. We're actually all on the same side. But you find out, all right, this is the strategy they have in their heads. Look, here's a guy who I give credit to for George Bush winning his second term. What an idiot I would be if I didn't shut up and listen to what he had to say. The man is very good at politics. You can't close yourself off from people who disagree with you. We will never get, and you all know this in business, by the way. You have your executive offices. You guys don't all agree on everything. You go through the process. You get irritated sometimes. You find a solution, and if that solution ends up to be wrong, you just make a mid-course correction. That's life. Well, it's gotten in politics where we're not allowed to make mid-course corrections because it might not get you reelected. That's a shame.
Bob, let's go to concluding remarks. We're going to wrap up here.
Well, look, I think, this election is going to be like every election in the last 20 years. It's going to be a turnout election. It's going to be a base-driven election. 2004 was like that. 2012, it's interesting the similarities between the Obama re-election campaign and the Bush re-election campaign in 2004. We learned a lot, Republicans, on how President Obama's campaign organized. We took those lessons and adapted it to our technology and our data, and it's all going to be about turnout. So we have staff here in the ground in Mahoning Valley. We'll continue to build on that, and we expect, I'm just going to make a prediction here, that I think the President's going to win Mahoning County.
Interesting. He didn't win Mahoning County. He won Youngstown, right?
No, he won Trumbull. He won Ashtabula and Trumbull, but not Mahoning.
Okay. I think it's impossible for me to disagree. This election is 100% about turnout. And what we're going to be watching on our side is to see if the young people turn out. And there are some things that are going to happen between now and then that are going to have an impact on that. And we're going to be watching general turnout. But what we're really going to be watching, let's not forget how Donald Trump became president. The battleground state, electoral college. So those of us who do this for a living, we're already watching those states very, very closely. And let me tell you something. If the election were held today, it's a tie. It's a tie. It could be either of these people. And usually when it's a tie, it goes to the incumbent. So as we're sitting here right now, if I had to bet money, I would say Donald Trump does get reelected, barring anything that we're not foreseeing quite yet, including maybe a successful impeachment that I don't see. But there's a lot of things that are going to happen between now and Election Day, and we'll see. The Democrats have the opportunity to win the election. I can't sit here and tell you they're definitely going to be able to convert it.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage to be the incumbent, because you don't have to convince people that you can do the job because you've been doing the job. They can imagine you behind the presidential seal, sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office, giving the State of the Union speech. It's hard to think of Democrats doing that and visualizing that, except for maybe Joe Biden at this point. But that's one of the arguments that they're going to have to make, and it's a hard one.
That's a great point, because how you visualize the person who's going to be president is a very big part of this. Most of the complaints, if you talk to people about President Trump, even I will tell you there are policies of his that I have supported, that I agreed with. There are a lot of policies I didn't agree with, but I'm not supposed to agree with him. He won the election. My side didn't. He gets to do what he wants. That's how we play here. Our problem, though, is in the way he presents himself and how we feel that affects us on the world stage. And that is what's going to make this election so interesting, because Bob is right. The president, the incumbent, always has the benefit of we vision him, we see him as the president of the United States. That's a pretty striking image. This president is probably the first in my lifetime, and I've certainly disagreed with other presidents, who I don't see that way, but a lot of America does. And that will make this an exceedingly interesting election. And you said it, Joe Biden, we all have a vision. You may not support him, but you can see him sitting in the Oval Office. People are struggling with Bernie Sanders sitting in the Oval Office. People are struggling with Elizabeth Warren sitting in the Oval Office. Mayor Pete is the great question mark for all sorts of reasons. Can they see him there? But running for president, in my view, is very much like running for president of the senior class at Liberty High. And the same principles apply. So,
Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right, I was a little nervous when Guy came up with this idea. Having met Rick Unger before, I was like, okay, this could be interesting. And a Trump for Ohio guy, it's like interesting. But I met both of these gentlemen in D.C., I think it was a little over a year ago, while we were there talking and telling folks about the Valley and what we needed. And they both had what is one of those untapped strengths. We call it the diaspora of the Valley. And these folks, when they're in D.C. and they're talking to folks in the White House, they're talking about the strengths that we have here in the Valley. We're talking about the opportunity that's here in the Valley. And Rick, I appreciate your perspective. And you're right. The Valley is strong. We have a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of potential coming out there. Do we have a couple things we have to deal with from time to time? Absolutely. I was talking to 1,000+ different companies a year, talking about the business retention expansion efforts. And if we haven't visited you yet, give us a call. We'd like to sit down and talk with you, see what your strengths and weaknesses are, if there's any opportunities or hurdles that you're having, whether it's bureaucratic or policy level, we can help with that. If there are other things we can do to make sure that your company grows, stays strong, and stays here in the Mahoning Valley. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for braving the nice chilly weather outside, and I look forward to seeing you all again. Take care. Travel safe.